Story 1, Thoughtlessness. When I was in a deep depression and a few other smaller episodes, I was under such a black cloud and disturbed headspace that I would forget birthdays, plans, and leave things out. Hygiene is a significant indicator. Noticing that someone only ever has their hair up or wears rumpled clothing, or if they normally wear makeup and suddenly stop for no reason. People usually notice when it progresses to not showering, but it can start in small ways. Needing constant distractions, not wanting to go to dinners but being fine with going to the movies. Story 2. If the friend, family member, or coworker who keeps in touch with everyone and consistently checks on others suddenly stops or does so less frequently, people usually assume this person is always doing great because they are often cheerful and the one others turn to when they are feeling down. The problem is, when it is their time to deal with things, they do not want to inconvenience anyone, so they stay quiet. Then, when they stop reaching out as often, it causes them to worry that no one cares or that they have been forgotten, which can lead them into a darker place. A simple check-in on someone you have not heard from in a while goes a long way and can be more impactful than you think. Story 3. Disassociating and staring into space at random times, in social situations and even around friends. Keeping conversations very surface level. Constantly redirecting the conversation to be about the other person or people to avoid talking about themselves. Lack of interest in things they once found joy in. Answering questions with very basic answers and immediately redirecting to something else. I guess the silver lining is that we are not alone in feeling this way. I hope each of you start to find things that make you happy and can climb out of whatever hole you find yourself in. I hope I can too. We can do this. Story 4. It is strange. I had a friend simply post, "Does anyone know anything about handguns? I am looking to get one for self-protection." He lived in a metropolitan area, so no alarms were triggered. He shot himself in the heart. I had another friend who was the kindest, funniest, most happy-go-lucky person you could imagine. He would reach out to you when things felt off about your post and provide access to support. He could not overcome his own darkness, however, and took his own life. Story 5. You have not heard from them in 6 months. However, your ego tells you not to contact them because they did not contact you. Story 6. In a social encounter where everyone else is sharing their troubles, they remain silent and distant. They never mention anything wrong, and when asked directly, they give evasive answers. It may be that they are doing okay, but it could also be that they do not see their problems as worth the attention of others, which is common in depression. Story 7. Someone who is always stressed out, on edge, and irritable is suddenly calm, nonchalant, and does not care anymore. Check on this person. Maybe they got a girlfriend, boyfriend, a big promotion, or finished a huge project. But also, maybe they have given up and have an exit plan in place now. Story 8. Everything takes a long time. I take hours to reply to texts, hours to get out of bed, and hours to go to the store. Story 9. When people do not interact appropriately using idle chit-chat, the responses tend to be generic. For example, if you ask, "How are you doing?" or "How was your weekend?" the answers are often stock responses. If they pause to think about it, they are likely not okay regardless of their eventual answer. Story 10. During my worst depressive relapses, I would constantly ask how people were doing. If someone you know is always asking others how they are or if they are okay without any clear reason, please ask the same question back. I was on the verge of suicide many times in the past, and all I could do was reach out, ask if someone was okay, and tell them that I love them. I was never asked the same in return. It is a miracle that I am still here. Story 11. Joking about their problems, making them seem insignificant or relatively unimportant. It is a form of coping mechanism for many people. Story 12. I struggle with major depression. I can answer this for myself, but as always, this won't apply to everyone. 1. I use humor a lot, like in every conversation. It's a quick shot of dopamine to make people laugh and avoids talking about myself. Kills 2 birds with 1 stone. My therapist said once after not seeing him for 6 months, "I see you are still using humor as a way to not feel your emotions." Haha. 2. I am purposely vague about what I've been doing, like, "Oh, I've been working and hanging with the kids." Or "Nothing much, just the same old stuff." This can be easily interpreted as, I've been holed up in my room not showering, maybe crying, convincing myself that everyone hates me. 3. Random outbursts of negativity, sometimes veiled as jokes. I recently blurted out to my sister while driving, "Nobody has any empathy anymore." It made people laugh. 4. I constantly make excuses for why I can't go somewhere. It's usually because I'm tired or busy with the kids, but in reality, I'm avoiding having to give an update on my distorted view of my difficult life while everyone talks about how amazing everything is. There are others, but these were the first I could think of. If anyone feels the same way, feel free to send me a message. I've learned that getting through it with someone can be extremely helpful. Males preferably, I need more guy friends. Story 13. One person I think I missed was a friend from the same sports group who showed up in person at one of our games to say he was busy and wouldn't be around for most of the season. I thought it was strange because who comes in person to announce their absence? About a week later, he went missing in the woods, and they found his body 3 days after that. I don't know if it was an accident or suicide, and I don't want to reveal too many details, but if your gut says something is off, then trust your gut. Story 14. Common dissociation, just seeing someone disconnect from reality while sitting on a bench or in a friend group, breaks my heart. Story 15. A messy or dirty house does not necessarily indicate mental illness. However, if a friend's living environment is continuously deteriorating and simple tasks, such as throwing away cans, are left undone, it can be a significant warning sign. Sometimes, a person who is struggling may clean the refrigerator and wash clothes, but be unable to discard mail or pick up trash. This behavior can be difficult to understand. Story 16. Joking constantly, from my own personal experience, gives the impression that they are happy but also keeps the other person at a distance from asking deeper questions about the struggling individual. Story 17. They are exceptionally cheerful and upbeat to keep everyone around them happy and avoid being seen as an inconvenience. They will also always ask, "How are you doing?" hoping you will ask them the same in return. Story 18. When they have an excuse every time you try to see them, it is often because they have no motivation to get ready and socialize. Check on your friends who always seem to have an excuse. Story 19. Unkindness. I do not think the majority of people would choose to be unkind if they themselves were in a good place. Story 20. I have noticed that when friends change their social media habits, such as posting stories consistently, something is going on in their lives, and I ask if everything is okay. Story 21. When, without major changes in their life, people suddenly become too busy to do things they used to attend to regularly, such as hobbies or social appointments. I went through a period of severe depression in my early 20s and did this constantly. When people asked why I wasn't around as much, I would just tell them I was busy. What I was busy doing was wallowing in my apartment, feeling absolutely miserable. An ex of mine noticed this and convinced me to try a therapist, which became my first step toward recovery. It took several years. More than a decade later, I noticed a similar behavioral trend with one of my colleagues. A great guy, kind of the office clown. He used to be very engaged with people and was a regular at social events, until he suddenly wasn't. I tried not to press, but eventually did. He broke down and told me he had been diagnosed with cancer and didn't want people to know. This is difficult. We are all conditioned to hide our pain, and people can be very good at it. Story 22. At least in men, social withdrawal is often the first and largest symptom of depression. We can put up a good facade, but if you notice one of the boys not showing up to social functions as much and no one is hearing from him, check in on him for goodness sake. Story 23. Irritability is everything other than you, but it is hard to see that when someone is treating you negatively. It is overlooked as a symptom of other issues, including depression, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and stress response. Story 24. Speaking from my own personal experience, decline in work ethic, poor hygiene and cleanliness, irritability, if you have a roommate hiding in their room, severe atsne, sleeping a lot, poor communication, more negative than usual, lack of interest in favored activities and hobbies. Story 25. The isolation makes people lose perspective and begin to think others do not reach out because they do not care or because they are not worthy. In reality, they can just as easily reach out to friends when they need support. Combined with a lack of interest in hobbies and low confidence, it becomes a mental battle that feels like it is being lost every day. Story 26. Casual drinking. Society often dismisses alcohol use, but if you drink all the time, you have a problem. Story 27. When someone has struggled and things suddenly seem better overnight, despite there being no known reason for the change, you stop worrying about them. They are better now. You do not realize that it is because they made a plan. You do not realize that until it is too late. Story 28. They do not make or talk about plans for the future. They tell you to take action and encourage your future but never discuss theirs. Often, this is one of the first signs of someone being suicidal. Story 29. As Robin Williams once said, I think the saddest people always try their hardest to make others happy because they know what it is like to feel absolutely worthless, and they do not want anyone else to feel that way. Story 30. Being the first one in and the last one to leave can be a sign. Not always, but I used to work very long hours when my home life was difficult. My mother was in an abusive relationship and almost lived at her job. Story 31. People who talk about themselves a lot. I actually see this as a sign of loneliness, a sign of someone who just wants to be seen and heard and their humanity to be validated. Not narcissism. Story 32. They become defensive when you simply ask if they are all right or try to inquire about any behaviors you may have noticed. Story 33. Personally, I tend to grow a beard and let my hair become unkempt when I feel in turmoil. My coworkers usually joke that I look scruffy, but in my mind, I am just thinking, teehee, yes thanks. I feel like I am dying. Story 34. Being easygoing but not energized or enthusiastic. More of a going through the motions and not making a fuss attitude versus being excited to participate and active in the discussion or activity. An observer versus a participant. If you see someone like this, take a moment to check in and have a real conversation. Story 35. Somebody who is always tired. Especially for high-functioning individuals with depression, their home and workspace can be neat and tidy. Their bills are paid on time, and they are cordial when socializing. But they will always say they are tired. Depression exhaustion runs deep. Story 36. People do not care about individuals who are struggling. People do not like individuals who are struggling. Let us be honest. I have struggled for years, and believe me when I say this, people simply do not like those who are struggling. A sign that someone is struggling is that they have lost most of their friends. Story 37. Look for the person who is constantly doing things for other people. This person is very kind. They go out of their way to make others happy. They are a good listener. They give helpful advice. They support others when they are feeling down. And that person right there is really struggling. Story 38. It can be subtle, but when someone who seemed down or distant suddenly appears happier and more at peace. Story 39. Anger. They become angry easily, and their response often begins with an angry tone. This is a good sign that something is wrong. Story 40. Weight gain or loss can occur either through comfort eating, stopping exercise, or being too worried or busy to eat. Story 41. If someone is of a larger build and suddenly loses weight, people often congratulate them without realizing that the cause could be related to mental health. Story 42. I did not realize how much I needed to seek help until now. Nearly everything people are saying, I am feeling or going through. Story 43. Anxious, being binary, impulsive, and controlling in making decisions. A clear sign of someone losing control is how you can see them try very hard to keep everything around them under control. Story 44. My go-to reply to, how are you? Is, could be better, could be worse. However, I am not sure how this is perceived. Story 45. They are kinder to others much more than to themselves. Most of them do not want others to be as badly hurt as they are, and people do not realize this as often as they should. Story 46. Irritability is a symptom of becoming overwhelmed that many overlook as rudeness or someone being difficult. In actuality, at least for me when I am in a bad place, sometimes it takes less emotional energy to snap at someone than to try and be jovial or talkative. Story 47. Whenever you ask them how they are doing, the answer is always, okay, or, I'm fine, just a bit tired. Everyone has worse days. Everyone will rant once in a while, but not when depressed. You do not want to be even more of a burden than you already feel. You do not want to admit to yourself or to others or to both that you are actually struggling with everyday things. You do not want to always be complaining. You do not want to look like a failure. You do not believe the question is asked in earnest. Why should anyone care anyway? Or you simply feel nothing, but that is not exactly an acceptable answer now, is it? So okay, it is. Story 48. Having trouble getting out of bed and low energy. Many people are quick to call it laziness, but we are truly struggling to find the energy to wake up and exist in a world where life has not been kind. Story 49. So basically, everybody is struggling. If everyone is struggling, then no one is struggling. Just give all of your brothers a hug and tell them you are there for them. Story 50. Super happy and excited about normal things. They are overly pretending to be happy and have lost sight of reality because they are depressed. Story 51. As someone who is currently struggling, I tend to dissociate a lot and have a constant empty feeling. You will never really know someone is struggling unless they tell you. I have not gotten to the point of giving away my possessions, but that is only because I do not have access to them. Another thing people should look out for is being overly quiet and not speaking when they used to speak a lot. For me, I know my personality has changed a lot for the worse. I used to be overly excited about things, and now it feels like I wish I still had that excitement. I used to love DJing, cosplaying, and fursuiting. Now, it feels like something from my past that I will never get to experience again. It is hard for me to get any pleasure. The only time I feel any sort of excitement or pleasure is when I engage in risky behaviors. Another thing to watch for is if someone goes out by themselves a lot or spends money to a point where they either do not care or cannot explain where it is going. That person might also be struggling with an addiction. Lastly, if someone who used to enjoy being in the company of others now prefers to be by themselves, it can be a sign of struggle. All the things I have mentioned come from my personal experience, but I believe some of the same things I tend to do, others might be doing as well. I hate the fact that my life feels so empty and meaningless that I would rather engage in behaviors that are bad for me and unhealthy rather than try to engage in one of my hobbies. This is very difficult. Story 52. Sometimes it is just nothing. A very close cousin of mine committed suicide. I was with him that same night, about 3 hours before he did it. Everything seemed absolutely fine, and after I left, he hanged himself. I believe it had been building for a while. Ever since that happened, I am always worried that anyone around me might just decide to kill themselves. I think this has had a massive effect on me, and I always try to do anything I can for the people around me, even to my own detriment. I know I need to go to therapy, but I actively decide not to for one reason or another. Add this to abandonment issues from my mother leaving when I was a teenager, and here I am. Story 53. When my girlfriend is stressed or uncomfortable with a situation, such as someone's kind gesture towards her, she overcompensates by being overly generous in return. It is both cute and saddening. It is cute that such a small thing, like walking her out to her car when she is leaving my apartment to ensure she is safe in the parking lot at night, means so much to her that she feels she has to do something big and generous in return. But it is also extremely sad that she has been traumatized so much in her life that she does not believe she is worth the 2 minutes it takes to walk her to her car. It is also hard to get her to ask for things, but I am getting better at knowing what she wants and getting it for her. It will take time, but she is improving. She has also helped me tremendously with my mental health, and I am extremely grateful to have her. Story 54. They stop showing up. They stop texting. They stop calling. Other people miss it because they do not notice it happening. People are generally preoccupied by what is happening and do not notice what is not. Story 55. When someone consistently overextends themselves to help others, it can be challenging. I still struggle with this all the time. I feel like I lack the ability and tools needed to make a healthy, long-term change in my own life. Instead, I help others with their issues until I become overwhelmed and start sacrificing my own needs to ensure those I'm helping have theirs. Met. If you have friends who do this, especially if they have autism like me, please support them occasionally with their struggles. I have met many kind people willing to help everyone but themselves, and it is partly because of this that some are no longer with us. Being the one who gives help but never receives it can lead to feelings of bitterness, depression, and loneliness. Story 56. One thing I have noticed is that people are often only willing to share some of the depths of what they are feeling. When someone says they have been having a tough time, they are often testing the waters and struggling more than they reveal. Pay attention and listen, even when someone just says they had a rough day or week. Story 57. A drastic sudden change. I knew a girl who started wearing dresses to work. It was a complete change in personality, and she just was not acting like herself. One morning, we received the news that she had taken her own life. Story 58. It is when someone suddenly becomes very unbothered. This happens when people give up because they literally cannot care about anything anymore or nothing they do pays off. That person may attempt suicide soon. Story 59. Fatalistic thinking or expressions, such as, I don't have to worry about it anymore. Gift giving or sentimentality, for example, I want you to have this. It has always meant a lot to me. Mood swings, including a depressed person becoming drastically worse or suddenly happier. Stopping activities they enjoy or no longer interacting with people they used to frequently see. Neglecting personal hygiene. Ceasing cleaning or maintenance tasks. Story 60. Uneasy responses to simply asking how they are doing. I'll live. Could be better. Only because I have been feeling low myself and have been responding this way hoping someone will ask. Granted, I am an introvert, so work is not the place to do it. It is difficult to keep things bottled up, but at the same time, you do not want to burden others by dumping issues on them. Story 61. In my experience, straight up telling people you are struggling or having trouble coping with life is often not enough for them to notice. I hit a really bad slump about 6 months ago, probably longer, as it had been building for a while. When I recognized how bad it was getting, I honestly told most of my friends that I wasn't doing well. I really needed to talk to someone who would listen but couldn't afford therapy. Even just talking for a while to friends would help. I was usually met with either "you'll pull through, you always do," or someone who would listen to about 2 sentences and then immediately change the subject. I wasn't suicidal, but I was definitely at the point where I was okay with the idea of dying through my own neglect. I didn't pay attention when driving my motorcycle, stopped eating almost entirely, and spent most of my time not actively engaged with customers at work, just dissociating. I work with others for 2 of my shifts every week, and I don't live alone. None of these things were noticed by anyone other than my partner, but I just assured her I was fine, and she let it go. It wasn't until nearly 4 weeks without food, just water and maybe an occasional piece of candy or a drink to get a few calories that I finally reached out to one friend. I had been avoiding reaching out because she had just started a new job, gotten back into a relationship, and started school all in the past 2 months, and I didn't want to add more stress to her life. But at that point, I was starting to hallucinate and feeling really terrible physically, and I knew I needed to do something. She finished the class she was in and was at my work about 90 minutes later with a protein smoothie. She just chilled and talked about basically nothing at all with me for the next 2 hours. She is probably the only reason I'm here to make this comment right now. I guess the point of all of this is, no matter how obvious you think a sign might be, people around you can still completely miss it. Story 62. For me, it is reaching out a lot. I will not mention anything being wrong, but I tend to check in on my friends more often. However, they usually ignore me, and that makes it worse. Story 63. If we're talking fiscally, not eating lunch on break. I noticed this with a coworker. I just walked up and gave him half of my sandwich, and he immediately chomped down on it, then started crying. I walked off and said, "It's all good, man." Then I went out to my car and cried my entire face off. Now I have no face. But for real, just because someone doesn't ask for help doesn't mean they're too full of pride. They might just not know how to ask, or they don't want to be a burden. Story 64. Crying without an apparent reason, just feeling tired, or unable to identify the cause of sadness. Lacking motivation compared to before and no longer enjoying activities as they used to, possibly using coping mechanisms to redirect sadness, such as impulsive shopping, drinking excessively, or engaging in reckless sexual behavior. Story 65. Growing up as a guy, it has been hard for me to push myself beyond the "I'm good" stage very often. My friends and I have only recently started to ask each other how we are doing with serious intent and to answer seriously as well. I think many guys feel the societal pressure to keep to themselves even when it is detrimental to themselves or others. I do not know how it is with girls because I generally do not hang out with them as much, but for guys, I believe it is sometimes too tough to grow enough as a person to both ask for help and to ask others if they need help. Story 66. As someone who was there, they hyperfixate on hobbies and tasks to keep their mind at ease. A busy mind is a calmer mind, which keeps overthinking to a minimum. For example, if I do a big project on my cars, such as suspension, chassis, or deep cleaning, I can't dwell on feeling like a lesser father or that I am not doing enough. For context, I reserve those tasks for days when my wife is home. Sometimes I sit back and relish the moments, but other times I fall into a rabbit hole. The only times I get into an anger fit is because of financial matters. They are not severely problematic, but I have seen my attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism show when it comes to having or wanting better control over improving those areas. Story 67. Not eating enough or eating too much. Engaging in unhealthy habits, unable to process emotions, struggling with daily tasks, and lacking attention to personal hygiene. Story 68. Increased use of alcohol or drugs. People can use drugs recreationally and not have a problem, or get drunk sometimes and not have a problem, but if their drinking and drug use increases, that is not a good sign. Story 69. You know those interactions that last a little longer and have more depth and eye contact? Nothing super obvious, but it just feels a little off. I have done that many times over the years thinking, they may never see me again, and look back to this very moment. Story 70. A lot of the time you can genuinely look someone in the eyes and instantly tell that something is wrong. I use this on my friends often, and I have yet to be wrong. I always call them over and just say, "Look at me for a second." It usually reveals if something is wrong or not. Story 71. People can literally scream out loud that they are struggling, that they desperately need help, and people will miss it. Story 72. Anything that is not like they usually are, such as being dissociated from reality, often unfocused, unbothered by the world around them, or simply zoning out. If suddenly they are much happier than usual and there is no reason, activity, or special occasion you know of, or if unsure, you could ask a family member, always more affectionate, more present for others, taking close or loved ones to do fun activities. You might want to ask those around them and yourself to watch carefully and ensure they are not alone, as this usually indicates they may attempt self-harm soon. Story 73. Zoning out, momentarily forgetting to keep a happy face on, only speaking when spoken to, having a garbage pile in their car, always being busy. Story 74. If you have a friend or associate who goes out much less often or never anymore, they may be struggling. Not everyone is a shut-in or antisocial. Some of us cannot afford to eat out or go out for drinks 2 to 3 times a week, or we simply do not want it because we like to save money. Story 75. I have not been feeling okay for months now. I have been openly telling my loved ones, but I still do not think anyone has taken me seriously. Story 76. When I am at my worst, I isolate myself. Work has ruined me. I have been passed over and put out to pasture after 15 years. Story 77. When people start to disappear and no longer want to talk or attend events, they usually attribute it to being busy. People like to hide. Story 78. They do not want to talk about themselves. They will not be obvious about steering the conversation away, but they will be vague about their own answers just to give an answer and shut the question down or turn it completely around. Sometimes people are genuinely interested in you. They may not like talking about themselves. Introverts exist. However, this can also be a significant symptom of something deeper, something they may not have acknowledged yet. Story 79. Personal hygiene. Weight loss or gain, appetite loss. Withdrawal. Unusual risk-taking or avoiding behavior. taking more time off work. Addiction, increased or decreased sleep, decreased energy. Story 80. They avoid people and their questions. If you ask them about anything related to their life, they will most likely ignore or avoid it. Story 81. Avoidance even of my closest people, the few that remain, and disappearing from social media. Those are my signs. Story 82. Maybe an opposite answer, but if you know somebody who is struggling or depressed, and then suddenly becomes extra happy, talkative, and engaging, keep an eye on them. People who decide to end their life often become very euphoric once they have accepted they are going to do it. Story 83. I am the most upbeat and cheerful person wherever I go in public. I am also apparently a fantastic actor because I am certainly, on an ongoing basis, the most depressed and miserable person in the room. Maybe I am depressed because I missed my acting calling. Story 84. One of my coworkers' sons died by suicide a couple of years ago. She still can't get over how disassociated he was at his own birthday party a week before. She often shows me the video. He smiled when he knew he should to keep up appearances, but his eyes were vacant. It is so incredibly sad. Story 85. I am actively crying while reading these extremely relatable posts. I am trying to hide it from my husband next to me because I don't have an answer to his "what's wrong?" questions. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.